Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rational Female Podcast. And we are here live today with a very great guest, Theo Snodgrass. I have been on his channel about a month ago. And today we're going to be talking about the usual stuff, feminism, dating, and really talking about the effects of feminism on modern dating. So, if you've been following my content, you'll see that I think feminism has had a horribly detrimental effect on modern relationships because of really harming the way in which men and women relate to each other and making it very difficult for men and women to have, stable relationships. And, I think it's important we keep having these discussions because a lot of people now, especially people in their 20s or 30s, are really struggling in finding a partner, finding someone to build a life with. And because we've lost this, sense of harmony between the sexes, it's really difficult. So, Theo, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. This is psyched. I love big fan of your content. By the way, folks, for those of you that don't know, my name is Theo Snodgrass. I'm a comedian and podcaster out of Las Vegas, Nevada. So doing stand-up comedy is funny. I'm very interested in the differences between men and women. And so one of the things that I noticed you can't escape is just like the amount of hostility and cynicism that exists about between the sexes now. Like a lot of I've been at a bunch of different, I talk to a lot of different people. I kind of travel around. I talk to a bunch of different people. It's very common for women to just kind of like openly disparage men as like a body ritual, even if there's men sitting right there. Like it's just very common for them to just talk about how much they don't think very highly of men and how I think a lot of them feel like chronically disappointed by men. Some of this is downstream of social media programming. Some of it's downstream of like the way that the dating apps have made dating so temporary. So I think a lot of people are their experience of dating is being abandoned over and over and over again, right? So I could understand why that would build up some bitterness and cynicism. I also think to a degree, like social media, what it does is it'll take like a negative story of like a man being a dick, and it might be like a real story or a fake story. It might even be just an AI generated story, but it'll circulate that story. And then millions of women will watch the short video of that story. And then they'll feel like it happened to them. And they'll all engage in this like collective suffering ritual. It's brutal. The feminine rage anthem. Let's not forget that. I've been a ton of songs dedicated to. It's a whole genre of music, basically. I see the short videos all the time. So, anyway.
Yeah, fourth wave feminism is seriously amplified. I mean, I think feminism historically has been terrible, but fourth wave feminism seems to have made it so that now we can just see everything online. I don't know if you know a men's rights activist called Roma Army, but she does like videos on TikTok and she just does videos of herself reacting to some of the atrocious things that modern women say, that they say about men. And it's just awful. And I think that we have this culture now of toxic casual misandry, and it's really quite sad. This culture now of modern women not liking men. And it's interesting to hear that from a man's perspective, because obviously, I'm a woman. I don't maybe think about it as much, but I do. I mean, I have had female friends who identify as feminists, and, there might be lovely people, but they'll make these comments and you kind of think to yourself, is it really, well, how would you feel if a guy was saying that about a girl? And I think that, regarding dating, nobody is an angel. Like, we all make mistakes. We all do things. We all mess up in dating. And I think that, because my main thing is like, I believe that both men and women are not above problematic behavior. So I don't think that, men are oppressed. I don't think women are oppressed. I think that we both have an equal part to play in how we treat each other. And unfortunately, modern feminism particularly has amplified a culture of women just being so antagonistic to men. And, it's a shame. I mean, can you remind me whereabouts in America you are?
So I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. So that's
Okay.
a major. So that's one of the cities they make movies about. So it's the one with all the casinos.
Yeah, I know Vegas. I'm very familiar. I watch a lot of American television, so I'm quite familiar. But yeah, because I
Yeah.
know, like, for example, I've heard California is quite woke. I don't know about, I think
Yes.
New York might be similar, but I was wondering, like, if Vegas has a
So
particular climate where that's common.
yeah. So Vegas is tricky because it's there's so many. It's a pretty good mix of like blue and red, and people don't like. There's a lot of different folks with a lot of different views, and we mostly just keep it pushing, and we mostly live together. So it's like you run into a little bit of that. I will say, I lived in Southern California, and I lived in the Pacific Northwest, which are both very woke areas of the country, and that is where you encounter uh, a lot of the hostility, uh, especially like, and a lot of the materialism too, and a lot of the materialism and you can kind of see. I don't know. Southern California is kind of where I saw some of kind of the ruthlessness of the dating market a little bit. The other thing too is that in a place like major metro like Vegas or like in like Los Angeles or San Diego, which is places that I lived before, people are better looking in general in those places. So the competition on the dating apps is extremely ruthless. People are better looking and wealthier in those parts of the country. But there's also like the people at the bottom are like very desperately poor because they're very expensive places to live. So it doesn't take much to be poor out there. So I will say, my experience with the casual dislike, it's weird because the women will talk about disliking men in a way where they're confident that everyone around them, including the men, will be like, yes, no, I agree, men are terrible, we
Yeah,
all
it's
agree.
awful. It's
It's
so
like,
I
well,
can't
it's
stand that anymore.
consensus seeking too. I think here's the thing, because I want to believe the best in people. So there's a part of me that believes that there are women who are just nodding along to this, but they don't necessarily believe it or they think about it, but they're going along with it because if she stands up and says, actually, I don't hate men, men are fine. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, kind of a mixed bag, but I think they do their best. Like, even if she said something like that, she would get called a pick me and she would get socially isolated, from her group. I think, some of it is consensus seeking. And I want to believe in my heart that like not everybody's buying into it. And I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so when I say to guys, because a lot of guys I talk to, they don't understand why women hate them so much because they didn't do anything. And so I'm like, I get you. But imagine that a lot of these women have never had a good relationship with a man. So like, dad wasn't there. They didn't have an uncle. They didn't have a brother. Nobody.
I remember you mentioning this last time,
Yeah.
actually. Sorry to interrupt, but you said that's a very good point to make. Like a lot of these women who have these anti-male attitudes don't have a good dad, or they don't have a good male figure in their life. So I've got a very, very good relationship with both my mom and dad, and I've got a very good brother as well. So I've got that, which is very lucky. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, and that's right. And so then the consequence of that, if they don't have that good relationship with their young, a lot of times they go out into the dating market and they end up, because they don't really know how to evaluate a man's character, they just go for guys that seem exciting or sometimes seem emotionally distant in the same way that, because they don't really know good what a positive male figure would look like. They don't really have a model for that, so they end up making all these bad dating choices. So basically every single one of her experiences with men has been bad, and then she goes to college, right? And then her feminist professor tells her that all of her problems in her whole life, every single thing about her life that's wrong, is somehow a man's fault. And so she's like, well, that
Absolutely.
that intuitively, that gives her the sort of the logical framework to justify how she feels internally, emotionally anyway. So it's like, that feels emotionally true. So I'm just going to go with it because it's a vibe. And then you go on TikTok and it's weird. Like on the left, they don't have influencers as much. There's just kind of this decentralized sense that everybody agrees with you. So there's a bunch of smaller accounts, and then her favorite celebrity, her favorite singer is talking about feminism, her favorite actors are talking about feminism, her favorite influencers are all talking about feminism, her friends are, I mean, I guess you just get the sense that that's how it probably feels like that's what everybody thinks. And folks who do not agree with like I learned look, I've been kind of confrontational my whole life, but I knew anywhere I went, if I brought up feminism, there was a good chance I was getting in a fight. And I just had to deal with it. I was just
Yeah.
like, I was gonna end up arguing with somebody if I said what I actually thought about feminism. Like I learned that a long time ago. And so a lot of guys will just kind of keep their mouth shut and nod along with it, because one thing that is true that I don't know, that women definitely don't realize this, the extent to which men do not like fighting with women. You guys don't understand the degree to which we censor ourselves and like dial it back and go out of our way to be gentle when we have to have a
Okay.
confrontation with women. A lot of us are like terrified that it causes a huge cortisol spike in a man if a woman's having bad emotions, and we'll do absolutely anything to make the bad emotions stop. We're not concerned about winning. We're concerned about getting the emotions to stop. So that's where I think we're getting
Okay.
a lot of this acquiescence to feminism, is like, yeah, whatever you say, just don't yell anymore. You know, a lot of it's that.
Okay. I want
Um,
to ask you a question on that, but before I do, I just want to have a read of this comment from the chat. So somebody's saying it's kind of hard to live up to women's and society's expectations when it seems like half the population hates your existence and blames you for all of the world's problems. Yeah, that sounds quite
yeah,
rough, to be honest.
yeah, that maps onto what I hear from my audience as well. It's like I'm trying to tell them it's good to go out and talk to women, because right, men and women have to get along at some point. Like we can't do this forever or we don't have a civilization. So in order for our civilization to continue, men and women have to get together and form stable relationships and have children and raise them. Other, we're not going to have a future society, right? So, but
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
a lot of the men feel like, what is even the point of doing this? Because every woman I talk to is going to be, confrontational, hate my guts. And because remember, because women's algorithm is training them to hate men. Sure, we definitely acknowledge that. But it is equally true that men's algorithm is training them to really, really not like women very much. And it shows them, hey, here's what these because it'll feed the women, uh, angry feminist rhetoric, and then they'll make angry TikToks, and then it'll show those angry TikToks to men. It's like, this is what women think of you. Or there's like a million reaction channels where they're
Okay.
like, showcasing this stuff. Now, to be fair, I do think it is fair to say it's only like the angriest 5% of people who are making those videos, and that it's the angriest like 10% of people who are, leaving the angry, hateful comments on those videos. So but I think what's crucial is everybody's seeing them. So the perception, I think, by a lot of men when they see a video like that is all women hate me. And the perception, and then when the women go and look in the comments and they see all the hatred and the misogyny or whatever, I think they assume that that's how most men feel about them. I think a lot of people are just like burnt out. I don't think a lot of people, I think but we're only showcasing and amplifying the voices of the angriest people in the discussion. So most people don't feel that way at all.
Mm.
Most people want it to be over. I really think, but you know,
Yeah, no, these gender wars is terrible. So I'd like to ask you a question. You mentioned that men don't like fighting with women. Now, I watch a lot of films, I watch a lot of television. I'm really, really a massive film buff. And something I notice, especially from films maybe I want to say post 90s onwards, is a lot of times the women are quite mean to the men. And there's this kind of so coldness or meanness. And it's like the woman is usually a bit mean to the man. And I don't know if you've heard of this book called Why Men Love Bitches. I've read
mhm,
it. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't really cuss too much because of the
mhm.
the algorithm or whatever. But I wonder, like from a male perspective, do men actually find meanness in women attractive or coldness? Because I do wonder that if men like it if a woman is a bit mean or a bit cold. Like I don't know. Or do men not like niceness? That's actually something I want to do a video discussing, and I'd like to know what you think on that. Because in those films or shows, usually the woman's a bit mean to the man, and then they end up together. And I think is that what men want? Like, I'll get really confused. Is that attractive? I don't
Uh,
know.
well, look, this is funny. You asked me about this. I will say it's an unhealthy pattern, but a lot of men fall into it for sure.
Okay.
And it depends on the It depends on the guy too, and it's like not even like well, it's the same thing as like they say, women don't like nice guys; they go for assholes, and it's
Yes,
like that's
yes.
true to a degree. So I'll tell you what's happening from the guy side, and we'll see how much of it's applicable. So a lot of times, a guy thinks he's being nice to a woman, but what he's actually doing is front loading. What he's actually doing is creating covert contracts. What I'm saying, so he's like, I'm being nice to you, but there's an expectation that down the road you're gonna reciprocate
Polygamy.
with love and affection, right? And that
Okay.
feels not awesome over time, and it's also like not super attractive. I think the men that were viewed as assholes, don't get me wrong, assholes do well, but they only do well with kind of like unsophisticated women. Like no woman who's like self-possessed and likes herself wants a man who's just gonna shit talk her all day. You see what I'm saying? Like that's so
You'd
that
be surprised. I don't know. I think some very put together women have terrible, terrible partners. So I don't know
no,
about
that's true.
that.
I don't know. And it's like I think what it is it gets stuck in these like not so good patterns. Like that, like if somebody like I think you get like they shit talk you, makes you feel bad, and then it kind of makes you subtly want to earn their approval or think that you don't deserve another partner, and it can kind of get like this negative self-reinforcing thing. A little bit of banter during flirting could be fun, and everybody has like a different tolerance, and some guys do genuinely like mean women, but like I think mostly that comes from I think the extent to which men just respond to women just being shitty is wildly overstated, especially because the other thing
Okay.
too is in the current meta, um, like a lot of like the guys who are doing well on dating apps have a lot of options. So if you want to incentivize one of those guys to commit, I don't think it's a good strategy to be unavoidable or be unavailable rather.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
I think because it's a big crisis now, and you mentioned earlier about social media and how social media is amplifying this kind of mutual hatred that women seem to have for men. And I'm no angel myself. I have dated a lot and had a lot of sexual partners in the past, and it's something which now I've really been reflecting on, especially the last couple of years because of my personal difficulties. And I think that because it's very easy now for women to just go out and have a lot of sex and not have a committed relationship. And you and I were talking about this earlier before we started, how you said that most men now they're actually thinking more like, I want a family, I want to be more interested in my community. And if you're just spending a bunch of time in your 20s and 30s just being promiscuous, and then you're not having any real connections. So I don't know. I do think that feminism and the sexual revolution are not like, there's people now, they just talk about the sexual revolution, but feminism is actually not the same. That they're slightly different movements, in that feminism is more about analyzing a structure, whereas the sexual revolution wasn't just to do with feminism, it was to do with things like loss of religion and alcohol, which somebody mentioned in a book I read, and just cultural change, pop music as well, pop culture. But just the idea of like free love and people being just having all this random sex and not having a real commitment, it seems like it's
Mhm.
created this sense of superficiality between the way men and women relate to each other. And women aren't happy, women are sick of it, women want commitment, but women don't know how to get commitment. And men, they lie, they just think, oh, we'll just have a good time. And usually, like, it's the woman who wants commitment, and unfortunately, you don't know if you're going to get commitment. And
Yeah.
it's so confusing because unfortunately, a lot of men lie. They say, yes, I want commitment, or I want we'll just be the two of us. And like, I don't know, I kind of think, and I'm not religious myself, I don't support religion, but I think there's something to the older way of like a man and woman getting to know each other first emotionally before they agree to sleep together, because that actually protects women a lot more, and it ensures that the woman is getting stability, she's getting commitment, but also it makes the man have to step up. And I think I remember we talked about this last time as well, and I mentioned something I read in this book, the idea of feminine modesty and masculine honor,
Yeah.
and this kind of standard of having men and women have more of a mutual respect for each other, and a desire to share and build a life, rather than just have this superficial, like, oh, it's just another person in my life, blah 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 blah. So yeah, it's just really bad. I don't know. I think the state of everything is just terrible, to be honest.
No, yeah. So there's a lot to unpack there. One
Yeah,
thing,
there is. I make notes.
one thing I always say is like, I think we have to. I'm a bottom up thinker. I'm not a top down thinker. So I think I try to think about what regular people can do to make the world better. Because if we're just gonna like shake our fist at the sky about the Epstein files or whatever, that's fine. But it's not Benjamin Netanyahu's fault you didn't go to the gym today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
Figure your
agree.
shit out. Like, and
Yeah.
one of the things that I say to guys is I think you should treat women with the kind of dignity you'd like to see in the world, whether or not the individual woman you're talking to deserves it. And that's hard. Like, I'm a comedian. So when I perform, I used to play a lot of shows in the Northwest because that's where I'm from originally, which is a very woke area. That's where Seattle is. I don't know if you've heard of Seattle. That's where Seattle is, which is like that's where Portland is. So it's a super, very gay, the LGBTQ is strong up there. The whole you know they're very a lot of the anti-ICE protests were up there, even though ICE isn't super active up there. Like, I think there's still a protest going. They did a naked bike ride to protest ICE at one point. I don't know why. I don't know why they did
Yeah,
that.
they have naked bike rides in London as well. I don't get it.
I just prefer they
a bit
not.
weird.
Anyway, the point is, moral of the story
Understandable.
is, like, when I would do comedy up there, a lot of times, like, I would have feminist type people coming up and yelling at me, after the show, getting really aggressive. And it feels like that amount of that crazy hostility is, I don't know, it's challenging to deal with. And it's so I'm sensitive to these people that like don't want to go out and like make things happen. I will say but I do think that it's incumbent upon men to, when you're being yelled at, to not return that negative energy, and try to view the person in front of you as someone who's been hurt a bunch of times, and then be like, all right, well, and I'm not saying you have to dialogue with them. Just be like, you seem great. Take it easy. I'll pray for you. You seem great. Have fun. Go. But don't allow, I think you can't let the hate win. And I know that's like it's easy to say, but it's much harder to do. Well, the other thing, as far as dating, I would say dating apps and social media have done a lot to disrupt commitment, because we have this idea of instant gratification, constantly comparing what you have to other stuff that's out there, and you're constantly looking at like filtered photos of other quote unquote potential partners. Some of them might be DMing you, and I think, okay, this is important. This is an important distinction. A lot of women don't understand, and I try to be so gentle when I say this, but it's reality. I'm hoping some of your viewers can benefit from it. It's like, so one of the things that's happening a lot is that the men who are doing well on dating apps, it's a relatively low percentage of guys who are just like physically attractive, know how to take a good picture, know how to assemble a good profile, all that stuff. It's a relatively small percent. Most guys, they take one picture every 2 years. They're holding a fish.
Okay.
That's it. They don't take another picture. That's it. That's their one picture. They'll take another picture when they catch a bigger fish. That's what happens. Most men are not. So if you meet a guy who like is like loving on himself and taking a bunch of good Instagram photos, that guy's probably got some narcissistic tendencies. Most dudes ain't built like that, right? But those guys have a lot of success on dating apps. So the thing is, men are. The other thing, y'all don't understand how gross men are. And I'm going to say it like this. Men will have sex with women they do not like, do not respect, and in fact are not attracted to, even if the sex isn't good. That's how much men like sex. They will have sex with women they don't like, don't respect, and are not attracted to, even if the sex isn't good. And I think a lot of women, because they're not built like that, they will have sex with a man and think, oh, I'm in love now. This is my level. I had sex with this super awesome hot guy, and he views her like a gas station bathroom on the way home from work.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah, and that's a big honest. It's a very honest thing. I mean, I've read books like about this, like why men don't listen, women don't read maps or something. Men, they say this very bluntly. Even my dad will. My dad's a very old school African man. He will say stuff like that. So Yeah, I think it's that again. It delves back to why I think the older ways of women, not being so like quickly actually having boundaries, and
Yeah,
feminists
big
will
time.
say that oh, now the idea of women being sexually liberated is like female progress, but actually it completely goes against the way women are naturally wired. The majority of women, they want to have like an emotional commit. Like I hear this from women myself. Like most women who've had sex with a lot of men, they don't say, oh yeah, it was a great time. They say, oh, I regret it, and I wish I hadn't done it. And there's a sense of like, oh, I was hoping for more, I was hoping for a relationship. And I think that's quite sad. But I wanted to ask you a quick question, because we can always go back to that. Do you personally screen women you meet to see if she is a feminist?
Yeah, so I will say this. So I have a similar history to you in a sense that I was a very active participant in hookup culture prior,
Yeah.
and now I'm very against it. So that's
Yeah.
been my. So what I do is I only want to date a woman who's in values alignment with me. That's because I'm
Yeah.
only interested in finding a wife at this point, and I've
That
already,
makes sense. Yeah.
I'm 34 years old, so I've already burned a lot of my good wife finded years, so I'm not trying to waste every time I enter like a casual relationship or whatever, quote unquote. First of all, that's against my faith now because I am Catholic. So it's against
Yeah.
my faith to do that, for one. And for two, that's a waste of time because it's like a good woman. If I have a bunch of hoes in rotation and then a good woman shows up, I'm gonna like, no, baby, I can change. No, I want to be acting like a husband before she gets here. Cause no good woman is going to want a dude that's 34 years old and has a bunch of hoes. That dude's not changing. You know what I mean? No good woman's going to want to get with that guy. So I will say, cause I'm screening for values alignment. So before I even do anything romantic, before I even ask her out on a date or anything, I want to talk to her for like 20 or 30 minutes where I just listen. I don't say anything and I just listen. And the thing is, most women now, if she's an independent, thoughtful person, that will be evident in the first 20 or 30 minutes of meeting her.
Okay.
If she got her whole personality from TikTok, she can't hide it for 20 or 30 minutes. It'll just come out. She'll just say something like it never fails. And I will say, me personally, I'm not gonna get with a woman who has feminist views or who identifies as feminist or is very focused on that, because we're not going to be in values alignment, because I think men and women are different, right? And I think that we have different obligations to each other. And my concern is if we're going to have children together, I want to make sure we're going to raise them in values alignment. And so that makes it really easy for me. I also am not at all interested in casual sex. I'm not like, yeah, I
Yeah.
hate you, but I'm gonna pretend like whatever you say, baby. Because a lot of guys will do that. They'll just like, oh yeah, whatever. I voted for Kamala or whatever, and they'll just like not on with it, and then they'll crack, and then they'll leave, and then they'll be like, whatever, and then. This is something that's actually going on a lot of dating apps right now. Is men will identify as moderate, and women now know that that's code for closet conservative, and so then they'll
Okay.
filter that out. Mhm.
Yeah, on Bumble, I think it's if I see a guy who says liberal or left, I just say no thanks. Two questions. Were you always Catholic? And what constitutes a good woman to you in terms of good values?
Great question. So I was raised Catholic, and then I stepped away from the church. A lot of people who are raised Catholic uh, end up leaving the church, and I think what happened in our church anyway is that we got away from a lot of the tradition, and we got very like loosey goosey with it. And a lot of young people, especially men, are going back to the church, but they're seeking out more traditional services. So stuff that looks more like an older mass. So like mass that's in the Latin language, for instance, or has incense or organ music or stained glass windows, or we go to church in a big stone building instead of a community center. Like I think I'm a believer that all those traditions and symbols and traditional practices and the rituals and stuff, I think that matters a lot. And
Okay.
it wasn't until I went to one of these old school masses that I actually felt like I had an experience where I was connecting with God during the service, So I think a lot of guys, especially in America, I think a lot of folks, we feel like we are surrounded by degeneracy, and we're surrounded by lies about reality that don't make sense. They want to tell us right is wrong and up is down, and we're just being lied to all the time. So I think we are seeking something, or I think at least for me, I'm seeking rules that are not going to change, that if I follow the rules, my life will get better. And it turns out if you follow the rules of Catholicism to the T, or you do your best, because the rules are actually impossible and you're going to fall short all the time. That's part of the deal. But if you follow the rules, then your life gets a lot better. If you do what God says, your life gets a lot better. So that's what drew me back into the church, was just the rational calculation of my life sucks and it would be better if I followed different rules. So instead of making my own rules, I'm going to follow God's rules. Now, your other question, as far as like what constitutes a good woman, that's a really good question. So I'll tell you, me personally, one of the I really like the traits I admire are obviously compassion is huge, but I need a truth teller. I need a truth teller, and I need someone who can look at the truth and who can hear the truth and be able to process it and keep it pushing during difficult moments. Like I really do need that. I think that's important. Me personally, I want a woman who forms her own thoughts and can express them without you could express them in a way where I can hear them. Like I me personally, I like a lot of peace I like peace in my life. So I don't want to be in a relationship where people are raising their voices. That's a me thing. I really want to be mindful of the words that we use when we talk to each other. That's really important to me. It's one of my highest values in a relationship. And a lot of women are like very used to being just like casually, just like mean and dismissive to men. And they kind of just like view themselves as being socially above most men. So they're just like casually mean. And I really hate that. That's tough. That's tough to deal with, day in and day out. So that's important. And one of the reasons I think, especially now, I value independent thought in a woman, and that's rare in humans, by the way. That's rare in everybody, but you need it now because there's so many lies coming straight through the phone. You need somebody who has some ability to resist that. And I need her to be able to communicate. I need her to have her own thoughts and be able to communicate about them, because I'm sometimes wrong about stuff. And the whole point of having a wife is to see things that you don't see and to point out things that you didn't think about. And that's your opportunity that's the person you're going to bounce your ideas off of forever. Right. Mm-hmm. So she better have some, good. I don't want her to just repeat everything I said in a more feminine voice. I want her to be able to, give feedback and have her own thoughts.
You don't want a Stepford wife. It's interesting because I don't think any man really wants a Stepford wife. And it seems that feminists have this bizarre idea that men want a wife who is just going to, parrot back things. I think it's very interesting that independent thought is what you mentioned. Yeah, no, that doesn't sound unreasonable. I mean, I think that. Oh, I was going to say something now. It's gone out of my head. I do know, because I think also America is very different from the UK. I have friends who are Catholic or Catholic and Christian. I know Catholics, but I think that the approach to religion in this country is not as maybe this is the wrong term to use, but dare I say evangelical as I think it is in America. I'm pretty much an atheist at this point for various, very seriously personal reasons. I was not brought up religious, but I've dabbled in all kinds of new age spiritualism, and it completely destroyed me. So I'm basically an atheist. But yeah, to add it back to feminism, do you think that one of because I look at a lot of like red pill videos. When I say red pill, I don't mean like angry red pill. I mean more like men. So there's these channels I'm watching, and I'm seeing a lot of them crop up now of like videos talking about modern men and marriage. And I think a lot of them are AI generated, but they have these like cartoons of men say that in like a voiceover saying that, now 70% of divorces are initiated by women. The man comes home and he's just tired. And do you think that like the idea of a man now wanting to find, a wife has become so much harder than it was, say, 30, 40, 50 years ago?
Yeah, stupendously. We call that colloquially, we call that hoflation, where you have
Okay.
to work harder for a lower quality woman. But yeah, and I don't know. So this is what I will say. I mean, there's all sorts of like ways you could talk about it that like makes it angry or bitter or dismissive. But like I think the actual reality is that it's a lot harder for men to distinguish themselves in a way that women find impressive, and that's making it everybody unhappy. So one of the things that you don't want a society with a ton of male losers, and that's what we have right now. We have a ton of male losers, and that women do not like that. Because here's the thing, women don't like male losers. Could we like all of you? You like some of us. You like the one. You guys like the ones you like. We like all women, right?
Is
Even
that
like,
true?
yeah, big time. Like, okay, I'll tell you what I mean
Interesting.
by that. So like women really like men who are doing well and are
Yeah, have a
successful and
good
are good
job,
looking.
have money. Yeah.
Like, and there's also now, to women's credit, there's a lot of ways men can distinguish themselves. It used to be the guy who was the best at fighting got all the chicks, right?
Yeah.
But then some guy picked up a guitar and all of a sudden that guy got some chicks. And then some guy, right, got really good at farming and that guy got some chicks. And then pretty soon, like women, one thing I like about women is they're into a lot of different stuff. Like there are women who think Ed Sheeran is attractive. I don't get that at all, but good for Ed Sheeran and good for guys who look like Ed Sheeran. I'm glad that you guys find that entertaining. I don't know why women like comedy so much. I don't find it that entertaining.
Actually, there is I think Christopher Hitchens said that the reason why men are more funny than women is because it's one of the ways in which men are attractive to
Yes.
women. So that's one of the reasons why, men tend to be funnier than women. It's not because women aren't funny. Men having a sense of humor, making a woman laugh, there's a very, very evolutionary reason for it.
Yeah, but you have to learn how to do something, man. You gotta, and like a lot of us are like not, and we got to learn how to distinguish ourselves. One of the problems in our society is, I think, because of a lot of these like feminist programs and the government putting a thumb on the scale and the threat of civil rights lawsuits and stuff like that, and the sort of the just general feminizing of the educational institutions. A lot more women now have college degrees, especially among the young. A lot more women have
Yes.
college degrees than men, and those women that got college degrees, first of all, they were told that having a college degree makes you an aristocrat. You're better than other people now, and so they look at men who do not have college degrees, and they're like, well, I would never mess with you in 1,000 years. And then a lot of the men who do have college degrees are some of these more like limp-wristed feminist men they wouldn't consider in 1,000 years. So then when you get like the dudes who are both attractive and have degrees, it's like a vanishingly small percentage of the population that is now getting, a ton of access. And so that creates a bad situation for everyone. And
Yeah. Now, women are typically drawn to competence, and I think we talked about this last time as well. The more educated a woman is, the harder it is for her to get married. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about myself, but I think, like, as a woman, if you're very, very intellectual, you are automatically, you're not going to be very attracted to men who are not that intellectual, you can't have a
yeah, big time.
conversation with. So you're going to be looking at men who are very intellectual. And if a man is not very intellectual, like, that's, to me anyway, that's really, really boring. It's like we can't have a conversation. So, I think that is definitely, I think personally, if a woman is more intellectual, it's actually much harder to find a stable
That's a
mate
fact.
because, and I don't know, I mean, you said that you want a woman who thinks independently, but when it comes to if we look at from an evolutionary perspective, when it comes to what a woman wants from a man and a man wants from a woman, it's two very different things. Like men are usually drawn to, if she's, as you said, compassionate, or things like empathy, warmth, kind of like a domesticity, whereas women are more drawn to like competence. And I don't know if men want a wife who is necessarily like more, it's not even more intelligent, but who's going to be like, constantly, trying to pick fights with them or start an argument, or, like if a woman is super, super intellectual, I don't know if that is like off-putting to men, if it feels like they're having someone who's trying to compete with them. I don't know what
Well,
your take is on that.
I'll just say what the data says. And like, I literally just pulled up a study about this like 2 or 3 months ago because I was talking to I had a female friend who was just dead certain that her looks were the reason she's single. And I was like, no, it's an IQ problem and I can prove it. This is what I'm talking about. Like, so basically for every standard deviation above the average a woman's IQ is, I think her odds of getting married drop by like 15%. So if you're
Okay.
2 standard deviations, then anyway, I didn't look at the study to see how that calculates out. But yeah, and the reason part of that is a selection issue. Like you don't really want to spend a lot of time hanging out with a guy who's dumber than you, certainly not forever, you know. And the number of guys who are smart enough for you to register as like, oh, that guy's smart enough for me to be attracted to him. That's just a relatively low percentage of dudes. And the thing is, the problem is smart dudes will marry a bimbo.
Yes,
and they shouldn't.
absolutely.
And
no, it's very, yeah.
I discourage that because, like, here's the thing. The cool thing about like dating a bimbo is she'll look at you like, wow, you're so impressive. But here's the thing, you're not that impressive as a dude. You're actually not that impressive. Like, you need somebody who notices when you're fucking up so that they can like kind of, not in a mean, condescending, rude way, but can kind of gently be like, hey, dude, you might want to take another look at this. And you actually need that. And I think there are a lot of men who because there's different reasons why you might choose a wife. Like I'm trying to choose a wife based on like my faith and my values. Some guys choose a wife the same way they might choose a car. Like they're trying to impress people when they walk down the street with her. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it is true that I think, okay, this is what I'll say about male selection. It is true that men put too much emphasis on looks, especially when they're first getting to know you.
Very biological.
Yeah, it is true. And that's what I think. It's like I hear a lot of women complain about that. I don't know if we can help it. And it is true. It is true. It is a fact. However, I will say most women are better looking than they think they are. Like most men find most women attractive. It's not like it's, whereas most women find you like the ones you like. There's some that are attractive, but it's not like, oh, awesome, there's going to be a bunch of dudes there. And then it's just like Gary and Steve. It's not like exciting dudes. Whereas most men find most women at least somewhat attractive. That's a big difference. So,
okay.
So it is true that looks matter, but most women are probably better, especially to the right guy. You might be better looking than you think you are. You might be better equipped to pull than you think you are. Although I will say the flip side of that, of course, is I think because of dating apps, we have very attractive men who are sleeping with women they're not necessarily physically attracted to, which I think is giving women mixed messages.
Okay.
And so that I think is creating some confusion. But so I think what's tough is like your level as a woman is not who you can get to go to bed with you. It's who you can get to commit to you. And I think
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think for a man, this is important. It's not just who will agree to go out with you. It's who will agree to go out with you and treat you well. Like it has to be somebody who thinks you're attractive and cool. If she doesn't think you're attractive and cool, then over the course of the relationship, that's where you get like the bitterness and the dead bedrooms and the rude comments. That's a woman who feels like she could have done a little better. Right. That's, who's just not impressed with her husband. This is why I'm saying, like, as a guy, you got to find a woman who thinks what you're doing is cool and thinks you're attractive and cool and interesting. And she wants to help out with whatever you've got going on. And your obligation as a man, I think, is to have something going on. Have something going for yourself, whatever it is, whether it's like skills or a job or a pursuit you got to have a mission already. You can't just be like, because men have this single-minded focus that they can bring to bear on the world. And if you do that for a woman, that's too much intensity. She's going to be overwhelmed. Like if your main focus is, I just want to make her happy, she's going to be like, get the fuck away from me. you know?
Yes, I've had experience with that myself. It's you made an interesting comment about the sorry about men being attracted to bimbos. I'm a big fan of the TV show The Big Bang Theory, and one of
Yeah.
my most popular videos on my channel is about this. So I don't know if you're familiar with The Big Bang Theory, if you've seen it or not, but
Mhm.
you've seen it. Yeah. So Leonard, he's one of the main characters. He is literally infatuated with Penny, who's positioned as not a very intelligent
Yeah.
person, right? And
Yeah.
Penny, she is like, because he can kind of talk to her, and he gets to feel like superior because he's
Mhm.
like super smart, and she's
Yeah.
not that smart. She's socially intelligent, but she's not
Right.
intellectual. And there's a character later on called Alex. She comes like in season 6, and it's interesting because she's Sheldon's assistant, and she has a crush on Leonard. And she's very, very intelligent. She's an accomplished physicist, and she's attractive. But she like Leonard is he doesn't really go for her. I mean, he's so in love with Penny that and like a lot of people would say Alex would seem like the more suitable mate. And me personally, I personally feel like I relate to Alex because she's very smart, she's nice looking, and she's an interesting, this very smart guy, but he seems to be more drawn to the lesser intelligent woman. So I don't know. I think that's really interesting, and I think that I don't know if it's talked about enough, but I think that it's sometimes if a woman is very, very, intellectual and always in her head and thinking all the time, it's a big stereotype, about how men, probably for a wife, they're not necessarily looking for a highly, intellectual female. So I don't know. I wouldn't know what to say to women or men regarding that, but I think that people should probably choose somebody who makes their life better, who actually improves their life, and who also brings a
Yeah.
degree of stability. Because I think that if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're making your life a living hell, then you shouldn't really be with them. And that goes for
Big
anyone
time.
too, like friends, family. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I think, put up with partners who are not really bringing their life, making their life better because they're just really afraid to be alone. And yeah, I don't know. I think it sucks. It's so hard, but it wasn't. There was a time when it wasn't this hard. There was a time when we didn't have all this, dating coaches and dating advice and people saying you got to be like this or be like that.
Yeah.
And now it's like everyone is just so confused and doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, though well, you said something earlier that I think is extremely true, which is that women should be very particular about who they lay down with,
Yeah,
because men, especially early in an interaction, you could just lie. Men will just lie, like, because you got guys who there's a part. Look, there's male sexuality when it's undisciplined craves constant novelty. Now, everything I say is qualified by with discipline, you can get better. So men can be faithful within marriage if they cultivate discipline around their sexuality. But the fact is, like, undisciplined male sexuality craves constant novelty, right? So if you're going to get that and you want to, then that means having sex with people and abandoning them so you can seek out other sexual partners or carrying on multiple sexual relationships at once. And they can just lie about it. But here's the thing: if you're a woman and you don't want that, you don't want to be roped into something like that, all you have to do is withhold sex for a while. Just be like, no, I'd prefer some more time and effort invested. Thank you. Before we move to that stage. And then guys who are no good are going to leave you alone. Now, the problem is you're going to have to be lonely for a bit. You're going to have to put up with
yeah,
dealing with, because a lot of the attention women get is purely, hey, are you interested in a short-term sexual opportunity? No?
yeah,
Okay. They move on. It's like constantly,
yeah.
it's
It's
like
very
you go to
sad.
the mall and they're trying to sell you perfume. They're just just yelling at you. And I think I don't know. I don't think men are sensitive enough to, women's plight because they get unlimited of the sexual attention and virtually no hey, I'd like to form a meaningful relationship with you. Uh,
Yeah,
and that's what they actually want. And it's weird because, like, I think the other thing too that I don't know if a lot of people understand is the men who are able to have multiple sexual partners are not having a good time either. That's actually, I know it's like
interesting. Okay.
it's
Actually, that's true. Yeah,
yeah, big
that's
time.
true. Yeah.
It's a miserable existence. But it's weird because it's socially reinforced. So people will reinforce you and make you feel cool for doing it, but inside it's like eating you alive. It's terrible. Another thing too is, like, you see so much bad stuff from women, it makes you very, very cynical. A lot of women are in relationships that they are not happy in, and they don't want to leave that relationship because it's safe. And so the way that they'll handle it is by cheating. And that's never been easier because of like Instagram and dating apps. Now, I've only seen the men's side, but I know a lot of women who've laid down with married men. So I know men are doing this too. I'm not saying men are not cheating by any means. I know men are doing this too.
Well, statistically, men do still cheat more than women. A lot of people now, especially on the internet, obsessed with talking about how women cheat, but actually, men, men do cheat more than women because men are, have higher sex drive. So I think it's a bit ridiculous to say like that women, women are out here all cheat. I mean, yeah, women do cheat. Somebody said, I think it's one streamer that actually that women just get away with cheating more because maybe they're more discreet.
That's part of it. It's also
I don't know.
women. So one difference is not every man can cheat, but pretty much every woman can cheat because, like,
absolutely,
not all men can pull. But even the ugliest woman, if she's just throwing it out, somebody will be like, "All right,"
absolutely.
Somebody will lower their standards, and so it's like I think it's tricky, man, especially because like it's the amount of offers between social media, dating apps, and just like, walking down the street. I think a lot of women are, it's confusing. I understand being confused and not knowing how to interpret the data. And not being able to tell the difference between a relationship offer and a casual sex offer, not understanding that there's a significant difference. And the way that you've sussed that out, by the way, it sucks because if you have like dads and brothers in your life, then it becomes very easy because they can clarify a lot of that information. But a lot of women don't have that. So I would say the best thing is to hold off on sex to the extent that you can. And I think for men, the reality is like it has to be hard to see boobs if men are going to rise to the occasion. And I like if men are going to men are as virtuous as they have to be to get laid. Men are as good a person as they have to be to get laid. A lot of men just respond to incentives. Like they're not pursuing like higher virtue. And the fact is like men are as good as women demand them to be. And
yes, I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big deal. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of women are unintentionally reinforcing bad behavior with sex, and it's incentivizing men to continue engaging in bad behavior. It's not good.
Yeah, no, a lot of women, I think we bring this on ourselves, like I think that because the culture now just, tells women it's okay to just sleep with a lot of guys. And, there are reasons as well, because I think that, there's a lot of reasons why women become promiscuous. It can be to do with like trauma, low self-esteem, or, maybe there's so many reasons behind it. It's not a black and white issue. But yeah, I think personally, like, for example, I don't know if I'm gonna, I'm not even thinking about getting married or having kids. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that because I've got a lot of stuff I need to work on in my personal life. But like, I think I have this very like massive, Disney fairy tale hopes. And then like you kind of, reality hits and you start to think, okay, actually it's not that simple. Like, and I don't think there's any real helpful advice. Most people just say things like you got to love yourself first, or you got to, like I asked somebody who was married, how do you find your husband? They just say, oh, I manifested it. Like people don't give very, there's not, apart from actual dating coaches, nobody gives very useful advice. They just say a bunch of nonsense. So I don't know. I think it's very difficult. But I want to ask one thing. We're going to come to an end within the next like 5 to 10 minutes. So we're going to start wrapping up. But do you think there's anything positive about dating apps? Because a lot of people now talk about how dating apps are terrible and how they're just ruining relationships. And you talked a lot about social media. I have used dating apps a lot, and I don't see the difference in meeting a man on an app versus meeting in real life. In my experience, both tend to lead to hopelessness and disappointments. So I don't know like what the difference is between a dating app and not using a dating app.
Well, yeah, this is what I say to men. Well, it is different with men and women. So I'll tell you from a male perspective, I advise men to not use dating apps at all.
Okay.
Because men outnumber women on dating apps pretty significantly, and women get so many more matches than men. It's just for your average dude. I think they did a study. You had to swipe like 10,000 times just to get a single date or something like that. And
Wow.
it was pretty rough. For the average dude, it's just not useful. Now, I was a person who did pretty well on dating apps when I was using them, and I still don't think people should use them. And here's why. So dating apps make money, or they attract investor capital based on how many users they have. So if you and I are on the dating app and we get married and fall in love, we're no longer using the app, right? So we're not users
Okay.
anymore, right? So the apps don't make money getting people together. They make money growing their user base. So you're there. You can buy a lifetime membership to like Tinder or Bumble or Hinge. The fact that you can buy a lifetime membership, like, bro, you think I want to do this forever? I don't even want to do this now. The fact that you can do that is a sign that these are not intended to be stable relationship apps. They're intended to be they're intended to keep you single forever on purpose so that they can continue to milk you for money. So that's why I advise not to use them. And I also think the reality is, like, I think for most of us, if our grandmother had Tinder, she probably wouldn't have gotten with our grandfather. And a lot of us, if our mom had Tinder, she wouldn't have gotten with our dad. The fact is, it does keep people apart, and the paralysis of choice is real. Like, thinking you have more options than you really do. That's huge. And so I don't know. It's tough because the question is, how else do you meet someone? It's different for me because I'm a guy, so I call my own shots. So if I want to approach a woman, I just do it. But I think I don't know, because it used to be people met through family or through communities or through all these places that we
bars and clubs, I guess, too.
Yeah, for a short time, yeah, and it's like, well, and it's just like all of the social norms around that have broken down because the trust levels of society have broken down. We have a much lower trust society than we used to. So like it's like before I convince a girl to be attracted to me, I got to convince her that I'm not like an axe murdering pervert. I'm not the evil, patriarchal man you saw on the phone. I'm just a regular guy, just here to have a conversation. But that baseline level of like the hatred and suspicion and dismissiveness, you can just feel it going through every interaction. And a lot of men are worried about, oh, she's going to talk about me on TikTok or she's going to Me Too me or whatever. I'm less worried about that because, but I'm not awkward though. And a lot of guys are just awkward because they're nervous and they're super worried about that. And the reality is the fear of being aired out on TikTok is making everything worse. The fear of being Me Too'd is making everything worse, even if you and I agree it's a little bit unfounded, it's a little bit irrational, it's not completely unfounded, and so that has really diminished cold approach as a strategy. So what I tell guys is you have to be comfortable breaking social norms. You have to do something some people are not going to be okay with socially in order to meet a woman. You have to talk to a woman you don't know. And that's basically illegal now. I know, but you have to do it and be polite. And if she tells you to fuck off, then leave her alone. But like, you have to take the risk. And unfortunately, dating apps, like I said, I do think are keeping us single on purpose to milk us for money. And so.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. We're coming to the end of the stream now. I just want to give my last thought regarding dating apps. It's very, very interesting to hear the male perspective. I have talked about this with my brother as well and other men. Obviously, as a woman on dating apps, you do have, an abundance of options, but unfortunately, I mean, for me, my experience of dating for the last 10 years or so, I don't see any difference between meeting someone in an app versus meeting them in real life. For me, it's not that different. I mean, the worst boyfriend I had was someone who I didn't meet on an app. We actually met through friends, and he was just a terribly, terrible, terribly abusive person. But there are meetup groups can be a good way to meet people. There's a lot of that going on in London. There's a lot of meetup groups. And I think it's just good to, even if you're not looking for relationships, to just go out and meet people anyway. If you can go to meetup groups, go to like social events, these things happen a lot. I mean, it's funny because I went to this meetup group and I actually did meet somebody there, and it was mostly men. I think I was one of the very few women there, so it is mostly men. And I think there's this horrible like abundance now of just lonely men who are trying to look for a girlfriend, and because women obviously have a lot more options. But more doesn't always mean better. It just means that you have more. But it's not always like the people that you want. And it's very true that, as you said a lot throughout this video, the men who women tend to have more options, so they're going to be more selective about commitment, and that's obviously very infuriating for women. So there's a lot of really good ground we've covered here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I'm gonna close up now. And yeah, Theo and I definitely love to have you on the channel again, and I'd love to come on your channel as well. I'm going to be streaming tomorrow evening. I'm going to have Tim Goldich on, and we're going to be talking. So do tune in for that stream. It will be on my community tab. But yeah, thank you for listening, everyone. And Theo, do you have any closing thoughts?
Hey, just go ahead. If you liked what you heard here today, follow me on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, well, links are in the description. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Until next time.